Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of MALN Opinion Plus. This is a space for our opinions, where we talk about current events and the questions the Latino community is curious about. This week, we're joined by Ellyn Ruthstrom, Executive Director of SpeakOUT, an organization that helps support peer-led training programs that prepare LGBTQIA plus people and community members to effectively tell their stories to create positive social change within their communities. Thanks for joining us today, Ellyn.
I'm really glad to be here again. Thank you so much, Diego.
Of course. So just for our audience, if it might be their first time tuning in, would you mind telling us just a little bit about the history of Speak Out Boston and your aims as an organization?
Yeah. So what's wonderful is this year is our 50th anniversary year. So we have been around since 1972. And what happened was there was a group of lesbians and a group of gay men, and they realized that there was nothing out there like Speak Out, providing the voices of lesbian and gay people into the public discourse. And so they decided to create the Speakers Bureau and start telling their personal stories in schools and different venues to raise awareness about our community. And over those 50 years, our community obviously has become much more diverse. We consider ourselves an LGBTQIA plus Speakers Bureau, and we have people of many different identities within Speak Out. It's also, when you think about 50 years of social change, it's pretty amazing to think of the bravery of some of those early folks stepping out and telling their personal stories, because it was much more dangerous for LGBTQ people 50 years ago. And so they were really out in front, making social change, telling their stories, answering people's questions, and really like breaking through the horrible stereotypes that were out there about our community. And I think it's amazing that we've seen so much change in that time, which doesn't mean that that we don't have a purpose still, because you can just open the newspaper or check out the news and you can see that there are still some really threatening things going on for our community. You can see in Florida, where they've just passed a horrible bill that's sort of silencing people in the schools from talking about LGBTQ plus lives. In Texas, they're criminalizing parents of transgender children who are trying to get their children complete health care. So, it's still a really important time to keep awareness building about LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah, I think that's so cool, like seeing the things that we can do as a group when we come together. And I hope that can be applied to the issues that we're still dealing with today. I'm really curious to hear, I know you've been an activist and a supporter in the community for a very long time, and I'm curious to just hear your personal thoughts on how things have changed and what some of the biggest, most important parts of it you've witnessed.
Yeah, well, I think that I've been an activist on a lot of different fronts. But definitely within the LGBTQ plus community, we've obviously seen a lot of positive change, with marriage equality, of course, being something that I think most people think of. And also that LGBTQ people can serve in the military. We have many more protections within the workplace than we did 50 years ago. So there's a lot of positive developments, and a lot of people, I think, would say that their day-to-day lives have improved a lot. But as I mentioned, once you achieve positive, progressive movement, there's always a backlash. And so the last few years, we have seen that backlash. And it's obviously not directed just at our community. There's a lot of backlash going on against communities of color, against immigrant communities, against Jewish people. I mean, there's so many different areas where there is a conservative backlash against progressive movements. So um, there's a lot of good to see that there's been positive change, but as with anything, you've got to stay vigilant,
Mhm.
and there's always a movement to look ahead and continue to make things better.
Yeah, I think that backlash is something a lot of people have been noticing recently, and I wonder in your thoughts, what do you think the best response is to that? At least in your opinion. I know it's hard to have one response at all, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, you just have to kind of see it as a process,
Mhm,
and that there you can always see positive, hopeful signs. Um, Even we saw this horrible thing happen on January 6th when this mob of people attacked the national capitol. But they did that because they lost an election and they couldn't
mhm,
admit to it. That over 7 million more people voted for Joe Biden. And that's what gets lost in that story. That's the positive thing. That set over 7 million more people voted for the Democrat. And I think that you always got to find where that positive part is in that negative part.
mhm.
And that hopefully was a wake up call for many of us um, to continue the fight for democratic freedoms and to make sure that the voting rights issue right now is horrible. It's jeopardizing so many people's right to vote across the country. Um, so it's
Yeah.
it's our constant work.
Mhm. I really appreciate that answer. Now, a little bit more on Speak Out. I'm curious to hear about your journey with the organization and being a speaker and what that kind of experience is like.
Yeah. Well, I've actually been a speaker longer than for Speak Out, longer than I've been with Speak Out as the executive director. I did that a few extra years beforehand. And um, the experience of speaking with us is really quite interesting. I've had so many speakers tell me that they've gotten so much out of it themselves personally. The power of telling your own story
Mhm,
and sharing that with people and working through things by telling people about your story. I've People have really gained self-esteem through it, obviously improving their public speaking skills,
mhm,
and just connecting a lot of the dots of within their own life, in able to tell an effective story and to connect the dots of their own life with the greater life of the community story. And I think that is really powerful. We've definitely from the beginning have understood that sharing a personal story um, gives a face to an issue. And once you've learned about somebody's personal story, it's a lot harder to deny it and to deny the humanity behind it.
Now, is there any moments maybe in your speaking or maybe speakers that you've heard where you just have kind of realized like, oh, this is why I'm here, like this is why I do the work that I do?
Yeah, I try not to do much of the speaking. I always try and put our speakers in that role. And a lot of times, they're out doing these without me there. And so I might not speak for months at a time. And then I'll go out and I will speak with some folks and I'll be like, I'll be blown away every time just to sort of hear something fresh and to see the reaction of the audience. And um, I see what happens, and it really is wonderful. I'll mention one story. um, we did an engagement up at a Christian college on the North Shore. And we were invited by the LGBTQ student group. They were actually an underground group because they couldn't be an official group on campus.
Oh,
But they
wow.
invited us, and we talked to the administration, and we were able to speak on campus as long as we allowed it allowed the opposition to also share the podium with us, which meant like the people who believe in you can pray the gay away.
Mhm.
And we had this panel of both sides, and it was a really powerful experience. The students there so appreciated having us there. And like afterward, just the connection of people who came up and said thank you. And so that it's those kind of incidents in particular where we really see how important the work is.
I can see how important that is to really like bring this sort of community into spaces where it might not seem very welcome and give hope to those students or people within those communities that think that community isn't there for them. So
Exactly.
that's really cool.
And that's what motivates a fair amount of our own speakers who came out of situations where they were afraid to come out,
Mhm.
or where they had a family that was unaccepting, or lots of different challenges when they were younger, and so they really want to give back to the community and provide that voice in those spaces to give hope, just as you said, like just to give hope to people and to know that um, there's community out there for them.
I love that. Would you mind telling us just a little bit about how people in our community can learn more about Speak Out and also get involved possibly themselves?
Yeah, I would love to tell you. I want to tell you about our opportunity because we have our spring training coming up. So if anyone is interested in becoming a speaker with Speak Out, please check us out at speakoutboston.org. We will have complete information up there. Actually, as of this week, we'll have information going. And so get in touch that way. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So you can find us and keep in touch with us that way. Feel free to email me at info@speakoutboston.org if you'd like more information about us. Um, I will mention that we really want to have a very representative um, speaker base. And so we definitely encourage people of color, transgender people, people of many different orientations and identities to consider becoming a speaker, because we want to represent your voice within our organization.
I think that's beautiful. Is there anything more you would like to share with our audience today? Just any closing thoughts?
Well, thank you for inviting us. It's really wonderful to make more people aware about us, because we speak in so many different places, and we love for more people to hear about us and reach out to us and provide our services for you.
Of course. Thank you so much for speaking with us today, Ellen, and for being our guest on MALN Opinion Plus.
Thanks so much, Diego.
Of course. Join us next time for another episode. And for more information about our discussion today, you can check out our web story on malatinonews.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at MALatinoNews and Instagram at MA_Latino News. I'm Diego Viruel with MALN Opinion Plus. See you next time.